Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking and emotionally charged stories in the Bible, Judges 19. This story is not for the faint of heart, but it holds crucial lessons about humanity, justice, and the devastating consequences of moral decay. Prepare yourself for a tale that will leave you speechless. Before we begin, I encourage you to stay with us until the end because God's response to the events in this story will surprise you. And if you find our content meaningful, please support our channel by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this video. Together, we can help spread the word of God to more people around the world. The book of Judges captures a period of great turmoil and moral chaos in Israel's history. This era follows the death of Joshua, the leader who succeeded Moses and led the Israelites into the Promised Land. Joshua's leadership had provided unity and direction, but his passing marked the beginning of a fragmented and leaderless time for the Israelites. Without a central authority, the tribes of Israel struggled to maintain their covenant with God. The refrain in those days, "There was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes," is repeated throughout the book of Judges, encapsulating the anarchy and moral confusion of the time. This period is characterized by cycles of apostasy, oppression, and deliverance, where the Israelites repeatedly turn away from God, fall into the hands of their enemies, cry out for help, and are delivered by judges appointed by God. The absence of a unifying leader and the lack of adherence to God's commandments led to widespread moral decay and social disorder. Each tribe and individual pursued their own interests, often in direct opposition to the principles laid out in the Mosaic Law. This chaotic backdrop is crucial to understanding the severity and shock of the events that unfold in Judges 19. In this setting, the story of the Levite and his concubine occurs. It serves as a grim illustration of the societal breakdown and the depths of human depravity that can emerge when a community loses its moral compass. The lawlessness and the disregard for human dignity that are depicted in this chapter highlight the urgent need for justice and righteous leadership. The central figure in this story is a Levite. Levites were members of the Hebrew tribe of Levi, set apart for religious duties and the service of the tabernacle, and later, the temple in Jerusalem. They were expected to be moral exemplars, dedicated to upholding and teaching the laws of God. In the context of Judges 19, the Levite's actions and decisions are supposed to reflect a higher standard of conduct. However, his character is complex and flawed, and his actions throughout the story are questionable and morally ambiguous. The Levite's concubine is another pivotal character. In ancient Israel, a concubine held a secondary status compared to a wife. She was a woman who lived with a man but had lower social standing and fewer rights. Despite her lower status, her role in the narrative is significant. The story begins with the concubine leaving the Levite and returning to her father's house, suggesting a strained or troubled relationship. Her subsequent fate becomes the catalyst for the horrific events that follow, and her suffering and death underscore the brutal treatment and vulnerability of women in that society. The antagonists of the story are the men of Gibeah, a city belonging to the tribe of Benjamin. Their actions reveal the depths of human depravity that can emerge in a society lacking moral and judicial order. When the Levite, his concubine, and his servants seek shelter in Gibeah, they are initially ignored by the townspeople until an old man offers them hospitality. However, the men of Gibeah soon surround the old man's house, demanding to abuse the Levite. Their subsequent actions, brutally assaulting the concubine, demonstrate their complete moral corruption and disregard for human life and dignity. The men of Gibeah's behavior reflects the broader societal decay and the absence of righteous leadership in Israel. Their heinous acts serve as a stark warning of the consequences of unchecked evil and the need for justice and accountability. The narrative of Judges 19 is a harrowing tale that brings these characters together in a tragic and violent confrontation. The Levite's journey to retrieve his concubine sets the stage for a night of terror and brutality in Gibeah, which ultimately leads to a national crisis and a call for justice. As the story unfolds, the moral failures and the horrific consequences of living in a time when everyone did what was right in his own eyes are laid bare, prompting a profound reflection on the need for a moral and just society. The story in Judges 19 starts with a Levite who embarks on a journey to retrieve his concubine. This journey is not merely a physical one but also sets in motion a series of events that reveal the moral and social decay of the time. The Levite's concubine had left him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem. The reasons for her departure are not explicitly detailed in the text, but it suggests a troubled relationship. Despite her lower status as a concubine, the Levite decides to reconcile with her, demonstrating a complex mix of affection and social obligation. He travels to Bethlehem and stays with her father for several days. The concubine's father warmly welcomes the Levite, showing typical ancient Near Eastern hospitality, and persuades him to stay longer each day. After 5 days of extended hospitality, the Levite finally decides to depart in the late afternoon, along with his concubine and servant. The lateness of their departure foreshadows the impending danger of traveling at night. As they travel northward, the sun begins to set, and they find themselves in the vicinity of Gibeah, Jerusalem. But the Levite decides against stopping there, deeming it unsafe due to its Canaanite inhabitants. Instead, they press on to Gibeah, a city of the Benjamites, hoping to find a safe place to stay among their fellow Israelites. However, upon their arrival in Gibeah, they are met with indifference and hostility. No one offers them hospitality or a place to stay for the night, a stark contrast to the Levites' experience in Bethlehem. This lack of hospitality is indicative of the moral decline and social breakdown in Israel at that time. As they wait in the city square, an old man, returning from his work in the fields, notices them and offers them shelter. This old man is also a sojourner, originally from the hill country of Ephraim, now living in Gibeah. His gesture of hospitality stands out against the backdrop of the city's callousness. He invites the travelers into his home, providing food and water for them and their animals, and they settle in for what they hope will be a peaceful night. As the evening progresses, a sinister turn of events unfolds. A group of wicked men from the city surrounds the old man's house. The men of Gibeah, described as sons of Belial, worthless men, demand that the old man send out the Levite so they can abuse him. Their demand echoes the vile actions of the men of Sodom in Genesis 19, highlighting the extent of Gibeah's depravity. In an attempt to protect his guest, the old man pleads with the mob, offering his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead. This horrific offer reflects the desperation and the deeply ingrained cultural norms of hospitality that prioritize the protection of a guest at any cost, even over the safety of women. The Levite, seeking to protect himself, pushes his concubine out to the mob. This act of betrayal underscores the tragic and unjust plight of women in ancient times, especially those of lower status. The concubine is left defenseless, and the mob seizes her, subjecting her to a night of horrific abuse and violence. This brutal act continues throughout the night, with the men of Gibeah showing no mercy or humanity. By morning, concubine is left on the doorstep of the old man's house. She collapses there, her hands reaching out to the threshold in a final, desperate plea for help. Her brutalized body bears witness to the night's atrocities, and as the dawn breaks, the Levite finds her there, coldly commands her to get up, but there is no response. The life has left her, and the enormity of the night's horror is starkly revealed. The Levite places her lifeless body on his donkey and sets out for home. This act marks the beginning of a quest for justice that will soon engulf the entire nation of Israel. The night of terror in Gibeah is a grim testament to the depths of human depravity and the dire consequences of a society that has lost its moral bearings. It sets the stage for the horrific events that will follow, underscoring the need for justice and righteous leadership in a time of moral anarchy. As dawn breaks, the Levite steps out to find his concubine collapsed at the door of the old man's house. Her hands are clutching the threshold, a silent testimony to her desperate struggle and the horrors she endured throughout the night. The Levite's response to finding her is disturbingly cold. He commands her to get up, showing a lack of compassion and awareness of the severity of her condition. When there is no response, he realizes that she is dead. Stricken by the magnitude of what has happened, the Levite places her lifeless body on his donkey and begins the journey home. His mind, however, is not just filled with grief but also with a growing sense of outrage. He understands that what transpired in Gibeah is not just a personal tragedy but a gross miscarriage of justice and a symptom of the wider moral decay plaguing Israel. Once he reaches his home, the Levite takes a drastic and shocking step to ensure that the gravity of the situation is fully understood by all of Israel. In an act of both outrage and a call to justice, he dismembers the concubine's body into 12 pieces. Each piece is sent to one of the 12 tribes of Israel with a message that demands they take notice of the atrocity that has been committed. This gruesome act is meant to serve as a stark wake-up call. The dismembered pieces are a physical manifestation of the deep moral and social fracture within the nation. The Levite's macabre message underscores the severity of the crime and the urgent need for collective action against such evil. It is a cry for justice that cannot be ignored. The tribes of Israel are horrified and shocked when they receive the dismembered body parts and the Levite's message. The brutality of the crime and the Levite's graphic plea for justice galvanized the nation. Leaders and representatives from all the tribes gather together at Mizpah, a central location for assemblies. They come with a unified purpose: to address the atrocity committed in Gibeah and to restore justice and order to the land. At Mizpah, the Levite recounts the events that led to the death of his concubine, emphasizing the wickedness of the men of Gibeah and the failure of the town to offer hospitality and protection. The assembly listens in horror, and a collective decision is made. They must confront the evil within the tribe of Benjamin and demand justice. The Israelites send messengers to the tribe of Benjamin, demanding that they surrender the men of Gibeah who committed the crime. However, the Benjamites refuse to comply. They choose instead to protect the men of Gibeah, aligning themselves with the perpetrators rather than the victims. This refusal sets the stage for a catastrophic civil conflict. A massive force of Israelite warriors, numbering 400,000, is assembled to march against Gibeah. The Benjamites, though significantly outnumbered, prepare for battle, demonstrating their resolve to stand by their own, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of guilt. The ensuing conflict is brutal and devastating. Despite their smaller numbers, the Benjamites initially manage to inflict significant casualties on the Israelite forces, which only fuels the determination of the other tribes to achieve justice. After several battles and heavy losses on both sides, the Israelites finally prevail. The city of Gibeah is destroyed, and the tribe of Benjamin is nearly annihilated. Only 600 Benjamite men survive by fleeing to the wilderness and taking refuge at the Rock of Rimmon. The scale of violence and bloodshed is immense, leading to a profound sense of sorrow and regret among the Israelites. The near destruction of an entire tribe raises questions about the nature of justice, the cost of internal strife, and the consequences of moral and social decay. The Israelites, now faced with the decimation of one of their own tribes, grapple with the repercussions of their actions. They mourn for Benjamin and take steps to ensure the survival and future of the tribe, providing wives for the remaining Benjamites to rebuild their numbers. The story of Judges 19 and its aftermath is a somber reflection on the consequences of unchecked evil and societal breakdown. It highlights the catastrophic impact of a society that has lost its moral compass and the dire need for justice and righteous leadership. The narrative forces readers to confront the depths of human depravity and the urgent need for collective responsibility and action against wrongdoing. This tale, with its graphic and tragic elements, serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of maintaining moral and social order. It underscores the need for compassion, justice, and the protection of the vulnerable in society. As we reflect on this story, may we be moved to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God, ensuring that such horrors are never repeated. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more profound and thought-provoking Bible stories. Let's continue to explore these ancient texts and the timeless truths they hold. Until next time, stay blessed.